Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, we're going to talk about we know this is allowed because he followed the Torah perfectly. At some point, we might be evaluating some type of behavior or action, and we might be thinking, what does the Torah say about this? Is this allowed in the Torah or is it prohibited in the Torah? And one thought that may come up for us is, well, this particular behavior or some similar behavior went on in the Gospels or some other source. It doesn't have to be the Gospels, but just for example, it went on in the Gospels. And we know that he taught and followed the Torah perfectly. Therefore, we know this is allowed because he did it. This is kind of an interesting approach to the issue because what was our underlying question in this case? The question was, is this particular behavior allowed in the Torah? Yet, our initial reaction was not to go to the Torah directly. Now, it could be argued that, well, what we're doing is we're just coming up with that as the starting point from which we are going to work and then show how that is the case according to the Torah. So this is just the starting point, and then we are going into the Torah and we're going to show how that is the case according to the Torah text. Or it could be that, well, we already know this is a valid assumption to be working from. We already know this belief is true because we very thoroughly and diligently studied the Torah. We figured out exactly all of the details of all of the Torah commands and exactly what the Torah allows and exactly what the Torah forbids. We figured all of this out beforehand, and then after we did that, we went into the Gospels or we went into the New Testament or whatever the case may be. We went into that text and then we checked it against the Torah. We already had thoroughly built up our knowledge of what the Torah says, and so it was just a matter of looking through it and saying, oh, okay, I remember this in the law, that is consistent with it, or maybe I remember a passage on this issue, let me go check that passage out and make sure that the passage is being interpreted correctly. We could say that, well, we already did our due diligence, we already looked through the Torah very thoroughly, and then we arrived at that belief, the belief that he taught and followed the Torah perfectly. And so it's legitimate to use that as a shortcut in this process. Well, this is kind of an interesting approach once again, because the question was, what does the Torah say about this? If we have already very thoroughly built up our knowledge about the Torah, if we already know the law that well that we made that judgment to begin with, then couldn't we just go straight to the Torah? Because that was the question. What does the Torah say? Is it allowed in the Torah? Is it forbidden in the Torah? Couldn't we have just gone straight into the law? Now, in regard to the first approach, the approach of stating this as our starting point, that, well, we know this, we know that he taught and followed the Torah perfectly, and then going into, let's see what the Torah says and how we can show this. Now, this is not exactly the same thing as what I'm about to describe. What I'm about to describe, you have probably seen go on before. You've probably seen people in an internet forum or an acquaintance of yours, maybe at your congregation. You've probably witnessed this go on before, especially if you have a background with Christianity, especially if you used to be in a church, because this goes on very often in those types of settings from what I've seen, because they don't have a very clear definition of right and wrong because they don't accept the law. And that issue being that sometimes people will have a very strong belief that some given issue is inherently allowed or definitively forbidden. And I'll give a couple examples that I have heard on this so you know what I am talking about. For example, I knew someone quite a while ago that he was a Christian, and he was also of the position that male homosexuality must be allowed because that was his personal inclination. And so in order for those two beliefs to coexist, he had to kind of creatively interpret the text to fit that, if he was going to go into the text at all. And so he was starting with, well, I know that male homosexuality is allowed because of his beliefs about the Creator. And then, if he was going into the text, he was going to find the evidence of that in his view. Now, we all know that that's not allowed according to the Torah. It's not allowed according to the New Testament either, for that matter. So we already know that. And obviously, these creative interpretations are obviously problematic. Another example of this is, I heard it in a Messianic congregation I used to attend. We were talking about, I believe it was the 10 Commandments. And so someone was talking about the thou shalt not kill or you shall not murder. And he was saying that this doesn't just apply to people, it also applies to animals. He said, I believe that you can murder a horse. I think that last part was his exact words. I believe you can murder a horse. And of course, we also know that this is not the case according to the law, that the killing of animals is treated differently from the killing of people. It's a different issue. It's a separate issue in the law. The issue of killing an animal, the most that is involved is restitution for that. It's not the death of the person that did it. And so clearly there are two different issues here. But he came at it by saying that, well, I believe this is the case. And if we had gone into the text, he probably would have found some way to show that in his view. It's important that we recognize, though, that in these situations, these people aren't just trying to find some way to lie about the text. They are genuinely operating from these beliefs. And they want both of these beliefs to coexist. They want their belief in the Bible or in the Torah to continue. And they want their belief that whatever given issue they feel strongly about, so I believe you can murder a horse, or the person saying that they believe that male homosexuality is allowed, they want both of these beliefs to continue coexisting. They want to believe both of them. And so the way that they're approaching it is just stating that belief as if it is fact because they believe it's fact. They genuinely do. They're not just trying to lie about it and mess with people. They genuinely believe that. And then after they've stated that belief that, well, you can murder a horse or something like that, then if they go into the text, they're going to go into the text and they're going to find what supports that in their view. Now, we probably know other people that are doing this. We may not be that bad, but this is a natural way of thinking. It's a natural way that many people approach these issues and others, not just issues of the biblical text, not just issues of the Torah, but basically any issue that could come up that could deal with beliefs might come up in this way. And so I think we need to be kind of cautious that although we may not be doing it in that exact same way, we want to avoid even getting anywhere close to that, in my view. And so as to this question, as to evaluating whether something is allowed in the Torah or whether it's not allowed in the Torah, where should we be looking? I think we should just go straight into the Torah. And if we are inclined to bring up that belief, the belief that, well, we know that he taught the Torah and followed the Torah perfectly, So we can just take this shortcut and say, well, we know that's allowed because it went on in the Gospels or in the traditions or in the patriarchs of the Tanakh, whatever the case may be. We already know that's allowed. If we had diligently arrived at that, we should already have that basis worked out in the Torah. So we should already be able to go into the Torah and to conclude that. So this is something to consider. I think we should be looking to the Torah for what the Torah commands. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out some of my other videos about other Torah issues, and be sure that you stay in touch so we can continue this discussion. Thanks for watching. Remember the commands. Shalom.